Record to the cloud. Okay. All right. So the first thing I wanted to say was in terms of this program, we've just spent the last 4 weeks talking about working with virtual teams. So virtual leadership and virtual teams. What I wanted to move to now was a series on high performance teaming. And these are the characteristics that we found. I mean, I've spent my life basically working with executive teams and teams all over the world. And then my team has worked with, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands of teams. And you do see what great looks like, and you see what, poor looks like. And over time, there's some very interesting nuances, as well as some very just almost black and white protocols that the best teams do and the best leaders do, and others not so much. So I wanted to just put them into this program. Now, when we sent out the invite for this one, we made a little mistake in terms of putting a lot of the content that we're actually going to talk about over the 4 weeks looked like it was for this week. So I wanted to show you how we're going to break it up. Let me just share the slide. Share screen. Share slide. So this is what we want to do over the 4 weeks. So today I do want to talk to you about some best practices, and I'm focusing on what I call game-changing best practices. So one of the things that is a pet peeve of mine is when people say, "Oh, that was a really good workshop. That was great. Really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun." I mean, as a business owner and leader myself, I'm not interested. I am interested in it being fun and, people having a good time, but I'm looking for people to move the needle. I want to see something that they say, I walked in at 9 o'clock and we were in this sort of frame of mind and doing things a certain way. And when we walked out at the end of that time, whether it was a half day or a full day, I think differently, I'm going to operate differently. And by the next day, they notice changes in the way the team works. So I'm looking for what I call game-changing protocols and best practices. And that's what I intend sharing with you today, particularly around diversity in a team. Next week, we're going to talk about recruitment and onboarding. So once you've got some of these dynamics, around best practices, it's like, okay, we've got our team now on the move, but as we bring new people on board, when's the right time to use ID for recruitment? Is it at the selection stage? Is it for the onboarding? When and how do you do all of that so that you keep it almost seamless with the team? So we're going to talk about that then. With week 3, I want to talk about cross-functional teaming. And I've just put the phrase in there, 10x, because I wanted to remind myself to say to you guys, I'm finding that when we work with cross-functional teams, the improvement in what an organization starts to accomplish is like 10 times the value of what we do with functional teams. And the functional teams think it's fantastic when we get them firing. But my God, the amount of value cross-functional is incredible. And no one's doing it. And I'm very conscious of sounding extreme when you say no one's doing it, but I would say to you, most cross-functional work, firstly, never happens. And on the rare occasion that it does happen, it's almost accidental. It's hardly ever done with intention, other than something like an annual sales conference, which is cross-functional and it's got, rigor around it. But for normal working initiatives, they're rarely tackled from a cross-functional basis. And yet the untapped potential there is incredible. And then with week 4, I've left week 4 open to mold into that whatever topics come out from you guys that you would like to see covered in this series. And we've already started getting some questions. So for example, sorry to throw all this up in one go at you, but you can see over there on the right-hand side, just to honor some of the questions you guys have started asking already, like how do different drives react to and deal with scary times, obviously very relevant to where we're at today, the sort of vulnerabilities that might pop up in times of uncertainty. And then, Al, I think you raised this one, the communication and behavior protocols to optimize team talents. And we're just going to, so if you've got more ideas, they might come out of today's webinar or more questions, keep throwing them through the week if you think of things. And then we'll look to, once we get, a couple of weeks out from now, to make sure we design that particular webinar so that we cater to as many of your questions and suggestions as we possibly can. That's the way we're structuring the 4 weeks. Are there any questions or comments that people have about this at this point? if you do have something in the question for the chat, Ian's keeping his eye on that, Ian Robertson. So just throw them in the chat, and then he'll make sure I become aware of them. All right, guys, with that, I'll get on with today. So the first thing is housekeeping is just to show you the culture of the team today. So this is if we take the collective IDs of everyone that registered and put them into one ID, as it were, a consolidated ID, this is what we get. And I wanted to put this up today because I thought this was very interesting, given that we're about to talk about diversity, because this is probably the best, in terms of diversity, the best ID culture that we've had in one of our webinars. It's not typical. Last week's looked like this, so it was pretty close to across the middle, but you can see it was skewed a little bit more to verify and avoid improvise. And that is pretty typical of a lot of the teams, particularly when you're working in technology companies, financial services organizations, engineering companies, where there's and particularly where you're working more at the upper layers, there's a very strong dominance of the verify drive typically, and normally a very strong avoid complete dominance as well. So to get diversity where it's fairly, I wouldn't say equal, but it's pretty well spread across all 4 drives, both use and avoid. You don't see that too often, and yet we have it here on this call. Not that we're a team, we're a group. We don't have a structure around roles and responsibilities per se, but I just thought I'd show you it can happen, and I've got some examples of that. So I wanted to show you this from a diversity point of view. Like, this was actually an exercise that we were asked to do. I looked at the date, it was in 2017, so it's 3 years ago. And we had a client, a very large organization, said to us, can you predict success of the ID construct of a team? So they gave us 4 teams. We were blind to who they were, but they said we knew they were in customer experience, profitable. They were leading these 4 initiatives: customer experience, profitable growth, digitization, I'll tell you how old it is, and invest in people. And they gave us the IDs, or we were given sort of numbers of for the people, so we didn't know who they were. And then you've got the sponsor, who the sponsor was, who the leaders of the initiative were, and then who were on the program teams. And they said, based on the ID mix, can you determine which would be the more successful teams? And I thought that was an interesting challenge, because I would have said, well, regardless of ID, you've still got to have, a certain, you've got to have a vision, you've got to have everyone rallying around the vision. There's work you need to do to really build out the team. Could it really be as simple as just defining potential success based on the IDs? What was interesting was I said to them, well, if I did it just on ID, here's who would be number 1, here's who number 2, 3, and 4. And it actually was on the money. And I thought it was, for me, to be totally honest, as an 8 in verify myself, I still don't fully believe it. I would want to see a much bigger sample size before I would sort of go, yeah, there's something conclusive here. But having now anecdotally watched a lot of other teams, there's no question that there are some principles here worth unpacking in a call like this, So I wonder whether you guys, if you have a look at this, does anyone have a sense of, if you were, based on your experience with ID, or just with teams, and you look at the mixture here of IDs, is there a particular team that would stand out to you as either the likely success or the likely worst performing team? You might have to take yourself off mute if you want to comment. Okay, so let me just sprinkle some thoughts in here. So first of all, we know, like myself and our consultants know, that if we go into a team and we see a team of color, so if we see a team like this, we look at it and you go, wow, there's a lot of purple. You can see it's 57%. There's a fair bit of green. There's some, cerise. And there's some yellow. So there's all colors. And then when you look at the avoid drives, it's like same thing. You know, there's color each way. When we see diversity, that's a really good sign. It means like the raw ingredients are there, so that you've got all possible talents and strengths showing up. The challenge is if you had a team where it was all purple, for example, and I know there are some of you have probably seen this. People say, well, I was drowning in a sea of verifiers. You know, there's like, they're just surrounded by people that are all wired a certain way. But we have seen teams where 100% of the people on a team like this are purple, or 100% are avoid improvise or avoid complete. And it's dominant in a very, you know, clear direction. That's not to say the team is a failure, but you don't have diversity. And when you have diversity, that is like saying we've got the perfect setup. We've got talent, all possible talents exist in this team. So then you got to say, okay, is the leader on the team someone that can extract that diversity out of the team? Because if you have a leader, and I'll show you an example of one, like this person here, when you've got an ID like Susan's, I mean, those of you who are familiar enough with ID, there's a right way that Susan does things. I mean, whether she's baking a cake, packing the dishwasher, or leading a team, there is a right way to lead this team. And she's probably got very clear expectations on what all of her people do and how they do their job. In fact, I've just hung up from a coaching call with a guy. His name was Ronnie. And, you know, it was interesting. We were talking about, you know, the way that he can observe himself leading people. And he said, Paul, it's so true. I mean, I've seen it. I've experienced it myself. I do it myself, where I've done a lot of the roles that I'm now leading. So I've got very clear expectations on how these things should be done. And if you have diversity in a team like Susan has here, but she turns around and says, well, but there's a right way that everything's got to be done, you can actually choke that diversity. So it's not sufficient to have variety in the team. You've actually got to have a leader that can liberate that diversity. Now, as it turns out, it's very unusual to see that with an ID like Susan's, unless they've had a lot of either training or a real passion around leading teams. And they get to the point where they go, you know what, for someone who's driven to do things the right way, or has a right way about how she leads, if she's learned that the right way is to liberate diversity, she could be a phenomenal leader. And this lady is a personal client of mine. She is an amazing leader. She's probably my standout leader from 2019 and what she achieved with her team, because she has learned that and she has come a long way. She'll openly admit that there's the way she used to lead and the way she now leads. And this tool has been a phenomenal gift for her to understand about diversity. And what used to be, you know, major irritation for her around the way people operated, now it's a source of fun and excitement and intrigue, because she sees people accomplishing in ways that are so foreign to how she does things. When you go back to someone like Mauricio, that ID normally thrives on diversity. So it's great when you see diversity within the team itself like this, and then you get a leader who has an ID that tends to thrive on diversity because they love all of the challenge and the variance that it brings. That normally is a recipe for success. So when I take you back upstairs to this original group, I look first of all for diversity. So I'd say the two at the top, the two groups at the top have a better spread of diversity than the two at the bottom, even though the ones at the bottom would think they're very entrepreneurial. And boy, you know, they would say, oh, when we come together as a team, we have the best time. I mean, we're really fantastic. We love each other, and we talk a lot. And they, with all those improvisers, they would talk a lot. The question is whether they'd get a lot done. You know, they probably have fantastic time together, but it's like over the course of time, do they do anything in between their big sessions? You know, that's the challenge. You look at the ones upstairs and you go, okay, there's some good diversity here. Now, who has got the leadership that would likely bring out that diversity? And for my money, I rank the team in the top left-hand corner as the #1 team, because I saw a lot of diversity just in the leadership team, let alone what they might start to extract from the program team. And although the program team doesn't have any completers in it, there are a couple of people that we didn't have the IDs on. What I do know is underneath that program team, you can look for other talent. So it's not the end of the world that you don't have diversity in the senior team or in, you know, whatever the sort of main team would be. But what you do is you then go, okay, where else could we find some of that diversity? And what we have is clients look downstairs, particularly to their high potentials, to then say, okay, we don't have any on this program team, but as we now start to recruit other people, what have we got in those track teams underneath? And can we start to give any of those high potentials a better opportunity to play up and complement this you know, more senior program team? And the team there on the top left-hand corner, the customer experience team, was far and away the more successful team. And the least performing team was the team in the digitization team. You know, and they were just they had a lot of fun together, but they didn't really execute and perform. And that had a lot to do with, you know, how the two initiative leads were collaborating themselves. And there was even conflict between them in how they were leading. You can imagine what that does to the rest of the team. So not to you know, spend too much time on this, but I think it's a really great thought as to, okay, in leading, you need to have diversity in the team. And this is like the ideal situation, diversity in the team, and then a leadership style that it can extract that diversity. So that means, first of all, understanding what diversity you have. Secondly, respecting the diversity. Thirdly, knowing how to get it out. You know, how do you get someone like Charles, who's a 6'7", 5'2", to really engage and shine? How do you take someone who's totally different down, like Susan in the bottom right-hand corner, who's almost the opposite ID in terms of her style, and get someone who's a full-on improviser to really engage and stay engaged and really shine? How do you do that? So having the awareness of their IDs and then understanding how to do it is really important. I would say the place you want to get to, and I encourage everyone to get here, is to get in awe of the ID, not the ID as a product, but their ID, the person's ID. Get in awe of it as a product as well. But, you know, if you're working with someone who's really different to you, instead of tolerating the differences or coping with the differences, you want to get to a place where you go, I will never be like that, but I'm sure glad you're on my team. I'm in awe of the way that you operate. That's the place you want to get to. And the ID as a product can help you, and a tool can help you develop that awareness so that you get to a point where together, you know, it's no longer an aggravation, but it's something that you are in awe of. And a leader who has that type of mindset and then has diversity in a team, that's what really works. That's the key to, you know, and then you've got to do all of the other high performance protocols. But if you've got that as a foundational construct of your team, you are 90% on your way to success. Now, if you don't have that in your team, I'm not saying that you should very intentionally go out and hire, you know, based on color. You want to hire based on resume, and we'll discuss all of that next week in the next webinar, like how you do that. You're not going to hire someone who's too junior, but at least they've got the right colors. You know, like you've got to get the right mix of skill and ambition and resume. But if you can look to complement your team with all of the colors, that's best. But often in a larger organization, you can have people down and around you that you can, as you become aware of like your broader community, you can start to call on that diversity. And particularly when you start looking at putting initiative teams together and working cross-functionally, which is what we get into in week 3. And that's where there's, you know, some, well, as I said before, 10x the value of some of the things that we talk about here. All right, any questions? Is this making sense? Is this helpful to see?
So Paul, Doug here, just on my side, there's so what you're saying also is that these various colors, various ID talents, they would evolve in using ID. In fact, it's almost ID as an onion skin as they develop their management techniques using ID positively. So the use of ID with a team would modify the team.
I'm missing what you're saying, Doug. Are you saying that, let me play back to you. Are you saying that as they become more aware of their ID and they play more to that, something changes?
Well, that person you highlighted as an improbable, very talented leader was actually leading very well with the Susan. It is, yeah. Susan, yes. And for her to deploy ID and giving her ID insights makes her that much more effective.
Very much so. Very much so. I mean, and takes the stress away from her. I mean, so the person I said I was just coaching, I just asked that person, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. There's some, challenges. And I said, when you, I know it's a different person, I'm just thinking of the names. On a scale of 0 to 10, where are you at in your performance? 10 being you're in stride, on your game, at your very best, and a 1 is you can hardly get out of bed to get to work. He said, I'm a 3. I'm a 3 out of 10, And I can tell you, when I started working with Susan, she was probably a 3 out of 10, and not only does that mean that you're incredibly compromised yourself, but as this person said to me, I'm a 3 out of 10. And I know, and I'll just share with you when we talk about this later, someone who's a 4 out of 10 or less is a flight risk, right? I said that in one of our webinars last week. I think it was last week. So this guy says to me, a 3 out of 10, he said, it's not good, Paul, when you start getting calls from recruiters, and there's always that question of like, do you return the call or not? And like, I'm returning the calls. So when I look at how you use ID like this, you can have someone who's, as you said, Doug, could be the improbable leader, but they're so out of stride themselves, they're not even leading from their best. So that is like a big dark shadow they cast onto the team. When they get in stride and they start to understand the rest of their team and know how to work with the diversity, not only do they extract that better from the team, but when you think about the shadow and the influence that they cast over the team, when they can get themselves to an 8 out of 10, which is where we say everyone needs to lead from, what a difference. I mean, no wonder people see a tripling and a quadrupling in the performance of the team when they do this sort of work, because they're liberating themselves, let alone liberating the team.
Yeah, I get the point, Paul. I mean, Susan there with the avoid, improvise. I mean, if she's into risk management mode, the biggest risk is her over risk managing, and the quicker she gets hold of that, the better.
Yep. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing there for a minute. I'll come back to this a little later. So what I want to move, are there any other questions or comments that anyone has before we move on? Okay, so what I want to talk about now are some of the best practices in teams. And I'm just going to talk to you about these. So I've got some things I want to share about best practices, and then I want to share with you what I would call the 4 game-changing protocols. So in terms of the best practices, I've already mentioned one of them, which is around being in awe of your team. And whether you are the leader of the team or whether you are on a team, I think that word of being in awe is just a wonderful place to strive to. And you could look at people on your team, and one of the things I'm going to talk about a little later is how you map out your team. But if you think of a spectrum, and on one side of the spectrum are people that you're in awe of, being in awe, and at the other end is like total aggravation or, struggling to deal with this person. Like, where are people on that spectrum? And you could do this at home. You could do this about, you and your family members, or you and your siblings, but are you in awe of the differences, or are you aggravated by them? Like, it's only April. I can tell you that in about another 6 weeks, I'm going to get a call from my sister asking me about Christmas this year as a really strong completer. Like, what are the plans for Christmas? And I jokingly say to her, are you talking about last Christmas or this Christmas? Because like, I'm so far away from this coming Christmas, you know, but you can take it either that it's an aggravation or you can be in awe of people and their talent. So that's the first one. The second best practice I want to give you is that you need to have completers on a team. And I've been really reluctant to say this publicly because it makes people feel like they're being labeled and there's a box around it. And again, it's not enough to have a completer on the team if you don't liberate the talent and actually empower it and extract it and shut them down. But what I've found is that best teams operate as completer-driven teams. Teams that, you know, they have structure, they have routines, they have accountability, they have a plan, they work to the plan. That's what the best, think of a sports team. If you had a basketball team and you go, well, when do you train? Oh, well, this week it's Tuesdays. I mean, not sure what we're going to do next week. We'll figure that out when we get there. I mean, that's not how the best sport teams work. And they'd say we train Tuesdays and Thursdays. Oh, I don't want to train on a Tuesday. Too bad. That's when we train. That's, you know, if you don't want to train, then you don't belong to the team. Or you don't train, you don't play. I mean, there's consequences, there's accountability. But I find that business teams don't operate as completer-driven teams. They operate as free-for-alls, and they call themselves teams, but they don't really want to bite the bullet and put the structures and the routines and the accountabilities in place. And even when you do that intentionally as an avoid complete person, it's just never the same as having a completer or a set of completers on the team who keep it alive in every element of the discussions, let alone the structure of the team. So I would say to you, when it's one thing to see diversity, but you then need to make sure that some of that diversity includes completers. And once you've got them on the team, your challenge is keeping them on the team, because a completer is not going to start something they can't finish. And if they feel like they're just being shut down all the time, and every time they put their ideas forward, they're just being told, you know, how hopeless or negative or what a wet blanket they are, and, you know, no one's interested in their forecasting and playing things out, then they're not going to speak up and contribute. So they need to feel really valued and appreciated, and like, you know, the team really thrives on their contribution. I would say to you, so you need a completer, but you need, or more than one preferably, so they feel like they're not abnormal, because a completer wants to feel harmony and feel like they fit in. And like, you know, we all think like this, don't we? You know, and if they feel like they're the odd person out, every time they open their mouth, they're not going to want to share. So it's wonderful if you can have more than one, but if they know that this is what you really value, and when they do contribute, you keep reassuring them that that is what the team needs from them, you know. So that means you also need an assertive completer. So don't just get someone who's got the right colors. You need to make sure they've got the personal security and confidence to, you know, contribute that talent to the team. As I said, I've been reluctant to call that out, but I will tell you, the teams that don't have completers, they might have great meetings, but if you look at the overall performance and execution and ongoing sustainability of the team and the succession of the team, doesn't happen. So I think that's a really significant call out. So you need them on the team and you need them structured. And then I'd say you need to do the work that a high performance team needs to have. And I think, Al, you asked the question, you know, how do you define high performance? You know, and I think it's a great question. I'm not going to get into it too much in detail today, but you could say, is performance based on performance, you know, actual like business results? Is it tied to culture? Is it tied to what you do further into the organization? It's a great question, Al, in terms of how you type. But what I will say is, and we have some slides, I'm not going to go through them, they're too much for today, but we do have slides on what are the behaviors, like how do you, we call them, what are the indicators of a high performance team? Like what are the things that high performance teams do? And I'll give you some examples, like the really practical things they do. Yeah, it's not about aligning to a vision. I'd almost call those things table stakes. But what happens in a high performance team is you get people volunteering themselves and their resources. You know, volunteerism is a really healthy quality of a high performance team. Cross-representing each other is a quality of a high performance team. You know, if you've got I'm going to Singapore next week, clearly I'm not, but if I was, you know, letting your team members know that you're doing that so that you maybe represent someone else while you're there, and that you've got confidence in each other to represent each other. I mean, that is a hallmark of a high performance team. So there are behaviors, not just business results. There are behaviors. You know, high performance teams socialize together voluntarily. That is not as easy to do if you're a virtual team, but if you are more physically connected, that is a hallmark of a high performance team. They don't just get together when they are, you know, coming around together around work topics. And so there are a bunch of traits like that that I can say when we've experienced great teams, we've captured some of those behaviors and protocols. But one of them for sure is that they meet regularly as a team. You can't be a team unless you're together as a team and solving problems as a team, not just doing business readouts. And so there are a whole bunch of things that you can do that, you know, are the hallmarks of high performance teams. Maybe we'll get into them in the fourth week if people are particularly interested in those particular areas. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to move along and I'll share the screen again and talk about some of the game-changing best practices. So some of you might have experienced this one, and if you have, I'd like you to talk to it, like experienced it from some of the work we do. I have a principle that I say, trust in teams is like oxygen for humans. Without it, you just can't function. And trust is something that everyone wants to have, believes they're worthy of having, and yet rarely experiences, or certainly doesn't experience automatically in a team. And when we talk about installing trust as a protocol and a foundation into a team, what I've found is that there are certain almost rules that you need to have in order that trust can shine in the team. Because we can all trust each other when things are going well. Trust gets compromised when, you know, when all the negative things start to happen, you know, when you've got to have the challenging conversations. And so what we have found is that the very first game changing, and I use this very intentionally, it is a game changer in teams, is to install a protocol of assume positive intent. Those three words, and I want to be really clear, this is not giving the benefit of the doubt. Some people say, oh yeah, well, I've done that. You know, it's important. You've got to give people the benefit of the doubt. It's such a subtle difference, but it is so much more powerful. And when we work with teams, we actually have a process for installing this protocol of assuming positive intent, but it actually means three things. The first is that you have to assume positive. As a member of the team, you're going to assume it. Secondly, when you see someone violating it, and you will see it every day, you call it out. You know, that's what you're signing up to, is that I will do it. Secondly, I will call it out. Thirdly, when I get called out, I won't bitch about it and be defensive about it. I'm just going to say, thank you. And I promise you, when we do these workshops and in the morning, we install the protocol and we stay with them for the rest of the day and we go to dinner at night, by the time we get to dinner and one glass of wine, someone is already bitching about somebody else. And we're like, is that assuming positive intent? And you can see them seething and wanting to defend themselves. And we're sitting there sort of waiting for the thank you, you know. But when someone starts to practice it, they see what it does. We started using this with the team in December 2010, accidentally. We didn't realize how profound it was. We've used it in every team ever since. And the teams will tell you, in addition to the ID as a tool to understand themselves and each other, probably the single biggest impact in the team in terms of shifting the whole dynamic in the team of all the things that they do, whether it's meeting every quarter or, you know, having certain other protocols, the number one game changer was the commitment to assuming positive intent. And we literally go around the room, and I'll do it here on, you know, as if we're on the screen in the way I've got the screen set up. And I'd be going around saying, so Ian, are you in? Do you commit? Yes or no? And they're allowed to say no. And every now and then you get someone who says, I can't have this conversation just yet. Like, I think it's happened to me twice in 10 years, but it's, you know, most people go, absolutely. Some people say, I'm in, I lack confidence, but if we all do this, I'm in, you know. You can see people really hedging at it. But I go around the room, you know, Doug, are you in? Michelle, are you in? Amy, are you in? Al, are you in? And if there's 20 people in the room, go around them individually. And it's quite profound what happens when people feel called individually to that protocol, as opposed to saying, so guys, are we right? Is everybody in? Because when you ask everyone to commit, nobody commits. But I would just say to you, if you spend some time, whether it's through us doing the work or whether you do this yourselves, but really taking the time to talk about this protocol of assuming positive intent, what it does for trust, but you've got to cover the three things. They commit to it, they commit to call it out. That's, I think, one of the toughest ones. And thirdly, to say thank you and not be defensive. You get that in place, it is a game changer. Has anyone experienced it or wants to comment on that? Make sure you take yourself off mute if you want to say anything.
Just to comment on it, I can see how that whole process of setting that standard is going to. I mean, you often hear teams talk about the no dickhead policy. This really brings it out.
Yep.
It makes it real.
Yep. Yep. Well, and honestly, Al, I've used it in teams that were toxic, were considered toxic. I won't say the name because for those of you who are in Australia, you would know it's one of the biggest companies in Australia, and we were working right near the top, and it was really toxic. And when we got together, we started in the December of 2010, and in the April, we got together again with that team, and they said, look, there's just a palpable change. And we're going around the room talking about what's working, what's not working. What do you think made the difference? And one of them said, I'll tell you what made the difference, you know, was this assuming positive intent, because the number of times that I bit my tongue and I've decided to assume positive intent, and it is a decision, and it's a decision every time it happens. And I chose to assume positive intent. So I went and asked the question rather than making the assumption that, you know, they just were, you know, doing something devious. There was always a constructive way forward, and that was a game changer for the team. And so it's occurred every time since. So it is, it's very real, it's very practical, and it is a game changer. Okay, the second thing, I'll put my slide back up here. Where are my slides? Make sure I show the right deck. I've just got to. Okay, so this is the second component of the game-changing piece. So the part I want to give you here is, I think all of you have seen this diagram. We call this our peak performance indicator. So it's not just the peak performance indicator, it's how we use it. And it's the conversation that we have around their scores from 0 to 10. So as people who are spending the time to invest in learning more about ID, I wanted to take you a little deeper on this today and give you some insights that we don't normally share as publicly. But on a scale of 0 to 10, the place, if you're not leading, how can I put it? It's not a linear distribution of energy and performance from, you know, 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 through to 10. The difference between a 6 out of 10 and an 8 out of 10 is a doubling of productivity. You know, it's not just, oh yeah, well, someone's a 6 and someone else is an 8, and it's a bit of an improvement. When you are a 6, you don't feel like you're only giving half of your potential value. It's one of those things that you don't know until you get to an 8, and then you look back and you think, wow, I mean, I don't know what's really changed, or I would never have thought I was so restricted. But the difference in my productivity and my success now is like, and people, I'm not measuring this scientifically, I'm just saying the way people describe it to us is, they say, Paul, honestly, it's like double what I used to do, you know, and we keep score because we've got their scores from working with them previously. And so first of all, the difference in each number is it's exponential, not linear. When you get someone who is an 8, 9 or 10 are the effective leaders. 7 out of 10 doesn't cut it. It cuts it at university and gives you credit. It doesn't cut it at leadership. You will cope. You might get by. You might be meeting expectations, but you are not shining. You are not, you know, casting the best possible influence over that team that you can cast. And it is possible to be an 8, 9, or 10 every single day. That's what self-awareness is all about, and self-governance. And, you know, I work with many people, and I guess that's why they're at the level they're at in business, is because they've learned how to manage themselves so they can show up at that 8 and above every single day. I remember when I was doing Hapkido years ago, I said to my instructor, well, yeah, it's not easy for you, Scott. You don't have to think about it. It just comes naturally for you. And I think we look at a lot of leaders thinking, well, it's easy for you. You're blessed with a certain positive disposition or a certain, you know, gift that you're like this all the time. And this Hapkido instructor gave me one of the best lessons of my life. When I said to him, it's all right for you, Scott, you don't have to think about it. He said, no, Paul, on the contrary, I never stop thinking about it. And that is what happens with best leaders. They never stop thinking about how they show up. And if that is fanaticism, then that's fanaticism. It's what it takes. Anyone who is excellent at anything, if you are a great musician, I bet if we went and spoke to Elton John or, you know, Billy Joel or any of these musicians that have not only been successful, but been successful over like 50 years, and you said, what do you think about each and every day? I'm sure the answer is music, music, music. I never stop thinking about music, whether it's writing a song, playing a song, it's in my bones, you know? So if you want to make leadership or your own performance a signature of your life, then it needs to be something that you never stop thinking about. What I can tell you is that people who come up as a 4 or below, and there may be people on this call, and you know, if you're willing to share it, I will stop in a second for you to share it. Or you might think of a time when you have been a 4 or below and just share, was that a flight risk for you? You know, when you think about where you've changed relationships or changes work, like roles, you know, where you maybe left one employer to go to another, and you think back to where you were on a scale of 0 to 10 before you made that move, what number would you say you were? And it probably wasn't an 8. I don't know, it'd be interesting to hear any of you that might be wanting to share. But I would say to you, on my experience, when people come up as a 4 or below, that's when they're a flight risk. Now, some people, of course, move because they get an exciting opportunity. You know, they're already an 8 and something else opens up and they make the move, you know. But for many people, these scores are not just, you know, interesting numbers. They have very significant business consequences. Anyone got something I'd like to share on that? Any of your own experience when you think back on your own life? Just make sure you take yourself off mute if you do want to share.
Paul, it's Ian. I was just going to make a comment. It wasn't necessarily me, but just thinking if someone was a 4 or below.
Well, this is for a friend of yours. This is
for a friend of mine. This is a friend of mine. You know that he doesn't mind me talking about it. Well, surely it's going to be very difficult for them to then maybe move into another role because they're not going to be showing up at their best.
Oh, what a great point. What a great point. Yeah. Unless they're self-aware enough to know that it is situational, and when they get out of that and go and work, you know, meet someone, they say that 70% of the reason people leave is more to do with their boss rather than with the role itself. It's the friction. And so the 4 out of 10 or less often is a result of the interpersonal dynamics between them and somebody else, normally their superior. So even just in an interview with someone that you really like and you feel a certain connection and chemistry with, just that may be enough to spike you to a higher number. But you raise an excellent point. Yeah, if you're not on your game, and it, you know, whether that be, you know, not just in your work role, but imagine you've got several things going wrong at the same time, health, relationship, whatever it might be. Yeah, you may not be presenting your very best self in your next career opportunity.
I just wanted to make a point and chime in and share that I 100% agree. And hearing that difference between 6 to an 8, doubling productivity, I feel like I'm in a new role today as of February 1st. And prior to that, I was really struggling. I think I was struggling on a health side. I was struggling with some just, you know, issues with like asthma kind of related issues. Mm-hmm. And I was also struggling with my connection with my manager. And I needed to grow, and that wasn't an opportunity in the position I was in. And I would say often I was at a 4, or, you know, a great day was a 5. And then making the transition, I thought, wow, this is going to be amazing. It's going to be great. But guess what? I didn't fix the health issue, and I couldn't get too much beyond that. And then I was dealing with the additional stress of trying to learn a new role and figure that out and build that confidence. And so that took some time. And today, a couple months into the new role, having better managed my health issues despite the pandemic, which I think has, you know, brought other stresses along with it. I feel like I'm not at an 8 yet, but I'm much closer, you know, probably between the 6 and 7, because the health is better, the new role I'm learning. So but I feel that exponential difference between each piece of it.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, what would you say your number is now, Vanessa?
I would say, you know, as of today, because I just feel like I'm just getting certain things under control since really recently, but today I'm at a 7, and I see myself moving, you know, I don't know, I see that light, I guess, coming down the way, the path.
Excellent. Well, it'd be interesting when you hit an 8, you know, it won't just be a 1-point difference, even though it is mathematically, but I'm sure you will feel this, again, another exponential shift in not just performance, but fulfillment and the difference you're able to make, you know,
Yes.
and the comments you get back from people, and people start to shine, and it's wonderful what they say, you know, it becomes infectious and contagious. I mean, that's what happens from 8 and above. So
I think it builds that momentum too. It builds
Correct.
upon itself.
Correct. Momentum is one of the most underrated, you know, sources of change and influence, I think. So yeah, you're on it. And the fact that you're even aware like this, and you're on this journey, you'll get there, and you'll get there very quickly. And even better, you'll be better placed to stay there. You know, you also now know what your standards are. And so when something starts pulling you off track and pulling you back, well, you won't go back down because you just won't want to go there anymore. You know,
Right.
You'll have strategies to help you. Okay. The third game-changing strategy is a concept of what I call team 1. So the first was assume positive intent. The second was how you use this peak performance indicator to really understand each one's number, and then utilize the people who are your 8s and above to cast the right shadows and influence, and not let, you know, or work with the people that are lower to prevent them being a flight risk and get them higher, but also be careful about their influence across the organization. That has a really big influence. The third one is team 1. So team 1 means just making a decision as a team that this team is our sacred team. You know, when people say things like the customer comes first, and, you know, our people are our greatest asset, and I report to this team, but I've also got my team. So you've got all these sort of potentially you're setting yourself up with all these conflicting priorities. And it's like, okay, if we've got a team meeting next week and we've got, you know, a red alert happening with our number 1 customer, do I come to the team meeting? Do I go to that customer site? I've got a conflict with my own team, or I've got something happening in my own team. Like, which is the priority? And the best teams will say, okay, so here's the deal. We are team 1. And when we are having a team 1 meeting, we are sacred ground. Nothing gets in the way of us being team 1. If you've got something else going on with you're out in your organization, you hear people making comments about someone on your team 1, even if it's from your own, you know, functional team, you protect team 1. You have each other's backs, and that's a commitment. Now, when you have that conversation as a team, that is not a 2-minute conversation. That is, you can see people rearranging the deck chairs in their heads going, well, hang on a second. What are you talking about here? You know, are we really saying that this is going to be the sacred team? One of my hallmarks of how do you know when you've made a real decision, it's when you've discussed the trade-offs. Trade-offs are a great indicator of real decisions being made. Because if people make an easy decision, you know, like we all agree, don't we? Yeah, we all agree. And you go off. When the people try to implement it, that's when you find out that, You haven't really fleshed out the decision. But when you've discussed the trade-offs, that's when you have, you know, the fur flying, because people are going, well, hang on a sec. So that discussion around team one can be a bit of a fur flying conversation. If you discuss what this, and the way I describe it is, you say what this really means is, when you think about customers, other teams, and when you know there's commentary around people on this team one, and they're people you don't even like, or you're struggling with yourself. So you're saying then you're going to protect those people, you're going to stand up for those people. Yep, that's exactly what we're saying. And if you don't like it, then you have the conversation in this room. That's what we're saying. So a bit like what Al said before, this is the real conversation that teams need to have to become a high performance team in the tough times, not just when everything's going well. I just would simply call that the team one protocol. And that is a game changer. The fourth game changing protocol, let me move to this now, is I want to show you this. I just want to call this protocol the 2x2, the team mapping 2x2. This exercise for leaders is game changing in how they lead their teams. And you can put anything on these matrices you want to put on. I'm just showing you an example here of things that we've done. But leaders, I'm yet to find a leader who has actually done this before we get to them. They might think about it around different individuals, but they haven't mapped the team this way. But if you just, and I'm saying, you know, you could use future focused and externally focused as a way of sort of figuring out people that are strategic versus tactical. And then you map your people. So you plot them and sort of go, okay, well, if I've got, you know, people on the Ian, where would I put Ian? Is he, and you just start with, is he more future focused or today focused? And then is he more internally focused or externally focused? And obviously the people who are more up in the top right-hand quadrant, the further out they go, they're your real strategic people. The more that they're down to the bottom left-hand side, they would be your tactical people. If they're, and there's no right or wrong, see, this is just where people are. What makes it right or wrong is if you want someone to be really strategic, but they're way over in the tactical box or vice versa, that's going to be an issue. But the first step is you plot your people, and what, as a leader and for your team, I mean, we spoke before about having diversity on the team as one of the hallmarks of, you know, success. But depending on where your team is at and whether it needs to be, like if it's a senior team and it needs to be more strategic, it's quite interesting when you do this exercise and you go, okay, where do I need my people to be actually? Do I need them all to be over in the top right-hand corner? Do I need some people, even if they're senior, to be tactical? Do I need anyone in the other two quadrants? Like, where do I really need my people to be? And once where are they actually? You know, and have I got too many people to the right or to the left? Am I missing? I've got some gaps somewhere. It's interesting when people plot their team, and normally they don't just do their direct team, they'll do like the two layers, or they'll do one for L1 and another one for L1 and L2. It's always surprising. They always, and I use that word underlined, they always get some type of massive aha around who's where and where the volume of their people are. So that's the first thing. And you can use, I've also done it this way, where you can look at EQ and say, okay, I want people who are strategic, but I also need people who have got, you know, good EQ. Because just because they're future focused, if they're future focused and they're really strategic, but they've got no EQ, like that's not going to work either. So you can have a field day with this sort of mapping. I've done it on trust. Out to the right are the people you trust, down to the left are people that you're suspicious of. And then you can put anything you like on the vertical axis. You know, there's all ways you can dice this, but when you do it, you might get a spread like this. And sometimes it's the extremes, like just because someone is, say on the strategic one, if they were right out to the, you know, top right-hand corner, sometimes when they're too extreme to the rest of the team, when you look at how they fit in, that might make them too polarized. But I find it really interesting to look at where the bulk of your people are, and then who the people are, like who's actually where. Because sometimes you've got your most not most junior people, but people that are relatively junior in the organization could actually be up there in that top right-hand quadrant. And you go, okay, are we actually exploiting that? Are we giving them the biggest, best opportunities that we can to not only, you know, accelerate their growth, but even preserve them? Because if they're shining like that, they're going to be, you know, hot property for somebody else. So I think that's the first step. But the second step is then when you then look at this from the point of view of potential, and you looked at it and thought, okay, who do I see, no matter where they are on the chart, what's their untapped potential like? Like I might look at the person down, you know, if I look at the person over here on the left-hand side here under the tactical area, that person, yeah, I can see them developing some EQ a little bit, but there's nothing in them that's going to make them more strategic. There's the person over here on the right-hand side, they'll develop a little bit, but I don't see them moving too far at all. I mean, they're, you know, so it makes you have questions then about if you were trying to build your team over time, to change people out, this helps maybe determine, regardless of how they're performing today, you're looking at the potential for growth. But over here, you look at this person who might have low EQ now, but maybe it's just because she's never been given the development opportunities. But you can see the basics there for, boy, I can see her absolutely shining. Or this guy over here, you know, invest in this person. I can see them being very coachable, and there's phenomenal potential for them. They've got the ID for it. And that's the other thing you do. You can then map the ID over the top of this to say, is there any ID correlation between the people that are more strategic and those who aren't? It won't always be ID based. There will be some people that surprise you. When you look at the development of these people and you overlay the ID and you go, okay, if these people, you know, based on their ID, I see a lot of development, it then informs you as to what type of development program might you use to give them the fastest, best possible growth. But this mapping is incredibly insightful to a leader. And I would say to you, number one, they can't wait to do it. When I show them this, they can't wait to do it. They always do it. And they can't wait to discuss it. And when we do, it is game changing where they go with it from there. So they're the 4 game changing protocols or strategies I wanted to share with you that are real. We use them every day with teams, and they work. And they move the needle for how the teams then perform and shape up differently. We're almost on the hour, guys. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to stay on for a little bit. But any questions or comments from anybody? Just remember, you've got to unmute if you want to say anything. Okay, I've done a lot of talking. I hope you found that helpful and insightful. I look forward to seeing you on our call same time next week, where we're going to talk about the recruitment and onboarding applications, again with best practices. And if you're available, look forward to seeing you then. If you'd like to bring anybody else, please spread the word. They're very welcome to come and join in. And these slides and the recording will be posted on our website within the next day or so. So if you want to share it with anybody else or come back and review it later, you're welcome to do that too. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. See you next week.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Paul.